Now, in the past 4.5 weeks, heck even 5 weeks at this point, we have seen numerous actors and or actresses out there head into freefall mode. Those out there like Rob Reiner, Robert De Niro, let's not forget about Sharon Stone, Alec Baldwin, George Clooney of all, which by the way is the main subject for today, and we have a lot to discuss about him in particular. But one thing about the Hollywood overall film industry, the entire media, and how it's now all in shambles. This is all, of course, all because of proper pushback by the general public after coming to the realization that they are nothing more than liars who are pushing their own quote-unquote false narrative, which indeed it is. We know that they have been liars for a very long time, and they are engaging in their own forced political rhetoric upon the public that really did not agree with the majority of people. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So, we know that Robert De Niro, alright, and George Clooney are in a very similar situation right now with Warner Brothers in particular. One specific studio that wants nothing to do with them anymore moving onwards. We know that some studios are beginning to turn the tide and are beginning to really realize that the pushback from the public is so large that they really can't afford to actually have any of these A-list stars associated with themselves anymore. Now, moving on to George Clooney, we talked about this a couple of days ago, about how he was fired from the studio altogether. His Oceans franchise expansion deal was diminished down to nothing, and how it is now officially no longer moving forward, and how that was going to be, by the way, a multi-million-dollar deal. Oceans 14 was going to basically allow him to receive $20 million just for starters, by the way. But moving into the major thing here is that with both Hollywood and the media now jumping on the blame game train while the chips are down, one monumental development that is now active involves more to do with George Clooney and his recent firing from Warner Brothers and his behavior toward that, much like Robert De Niro's situation. This comes in the wake of CEO David Zaslav weeding out top A-list stars getting too political to their core customer base. However, a crucial update to this development now is that George Clooney is already in the process of battling Warner Brothers studio executives and their decision of firing Clooney from plans for an Oceans 14 film, along with spin-offs that were set along with other sequels that would expand the franchise, much like the Mission Impossible franchise or something around those lines. This was best described as Clooney's golden deal that is now officially dead and not moving ahead, and George reportedly got very emotional about his loss with the massive deal that was going to pay, like I said before, $20 million just for one film alone. Already Clooney is warning to start a legal process toward not just Warner Brothers in general, but specifically toward WB CEO David Zaslav, blaming him for firing him based on political opinions. This is the same copy and paste argument that Robert De Niro had, who also warned of going down the legal route. However, with Clooney, he is said to be taking this more seriously and also more emotionally, since Clooney saw the Oceans franchise as his bread and butter to make a comeback for the remainder of the 2020s. Now, Clooney and his team, his agent and manager, are now frantically trying to go on talk shows to repair the damage that he did to himself when forcing his political opinion onto the public that cost him his career, that led to his firing from WB. Surprisingly, it turns out that Clooney only got the expansion deal for the Oceans franchise, get this, after agreeing to make a cameo in the Flash movie as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, toward the ending of that film in 2023. So before I move on, guys, let me just say one thing. The only reason why he got that Oceans expansion deal, that contract deal, a multi-million-dollar one, mind you, is that he agreed to make a cameo in The Flash. Now, that's exactly why I think a lot of people always found that to be very fishy. Why would George Clooney come back for a cameo in The Flash if he absolutely resents his decision of playing Batman / Bruce Wayne in that film that he did, you know, back in the 1990s, right? So, with that being said, alright, and looking at that in isolation, that's exactly why he was in The Flash back in 2023, just over a year ago. Now, another reason why Clooney is now moving forward with a legal case toward Warner Brothers for firing him from the entire studio and dismantling the Ocean's franchise altogether. Ocean's 14 was planned to undo some of the decisions made in Ocean's 8 that addressed that Danny Ocean had died, and was going to be used as one of the twists and/or turns in the newest film. However, with Clooney now out of a job with WB, more and more Hollywood studios are beginning to either fire Clooney or blacklist him as an actor, who never want to even consider working with him after realizing how unlikable and unpopular he has become, especially within the past 3 months after he doubled down on his political rhetoric toward the public. Now, to make matters worse for Clooney is that he is now stuck, completely stuck, with all of these low-budget studios, and I'll get to that in just a second. Now, what's interesting about this is that we know that George Clooney is trying to revive his career. We also know that he's trying to go on talk shows or other programs like Bill Maher, who, by the way, wants nothing to do with George Clooney right now because Clooney wanted to use his program to really use it as basically a way to apologize to the public and to also address his side of the story about what was going on in politics and his mind at the time. He's just trying to go into damage control, and I've said this once and I'll say it again. I think that at the end of the day, nobody needs these actors. These actors try to display themselves as more important than your regular neighbor that is either a doctor, a nurse, or any kind of working person that is really contributing to society, quite frankly, right? And that's just one example. We know that Clooney has said that before in the past, that you gotta trust people like us, you know, actors, he's said that before, rather than your neighbors, rather than your average person in your social circle, because they actually have a series of rules. That was his claim. And that really disassociated himself with the general public and vice versa. Nobody wants to hear that from actors. Actors should just do their job and act, not engage in politics. The minute you drag politics into your career, whether you're a musician, actor, director, actress, writer, producer, doesn't matter, you begin to alienate a certain percentage of either existing fans or newcomers or potential fans. But overall, moving onwards to the conclusion here is that, to top things off, even some low-budget studios are beginning to shy away from Clooney as it is. Now, George reportedly is in a state of panic for his career and is not handling the fall of his legacy well at all, which is why he is now desperately attempting to make apologies on live television. Now, this sounds familiar to what happened with Rob Reiner. He went on multiple meltdowns. He went into a clinic to the point where he could not handle the 2024 loss. We all know that. And Rob Reiner, I think, is the top of the top example of how people in Hollywood really just can't deal with the facts. They can't deal with reality. They're stuck in this bubble. They're stuck in this isolated, area within their minds where they really can't quite comprehend what's going on. And I think that George Clooney is inching closer and closer to Rob Reiner's status, and we'll have a lot more to talk about Rob Reiner, by the way, in the next couple of days. But overall, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about George Clooney, about the current status of Hollywood and the media and everything else going on right now. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.